With us today, we have Dr. Sari Hanafi, Professor of Sociology and Chair of Islamic Studies at the American University of Beirut. He is also notably the President of the International Sociological Association, as well as head of a very interesting project called Athar, which is a portal for social impact for scientific research across the Arab world. With us also, we have our very esteemed mentor, Dr. Heba Raouf, who is a professor of political science at Ibn Khaldun's Alliance of Civilizations Institute. We are always honored to have her with us, and we thank you both for being here with us tonight. As you all know, Sharq Diwan is a space for sharing ideas for the betterment of our collective futures, so to say. And so today we are exploring another very critical topic, that of the rupture or the rift between religious and social sciences. Dr. Sari Hanafi here has written a book after 5 years of very extensive research across the Arab and Muslim world, and is here to present to us today the, the culmination of his insights, inshallah. So yes, one of the very interesting things that we hope to address today are the challenges that we face, in this topic, the struggles or what we need to address between the religious and social sciences. As intellectuals, as policymakers, and even as students of knowledge, maybe looking for new paradigm shifts for new political and intellectual realities, inshallah. So without further ado, I would like to just note that for the first half of this session, we will be having Dr. Sari Hanafi presenting his book, and Dr. Heba Raouf, inshallah, giving us some insights about this. Then we will have a break for Maghrib prayer, and then come back for a question and answer session in which you guys get to express your opinions and share, whatever specific questions you had about the subject at hand. Without further ado, I give the floor to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for الشرق forum for the invitation. I will go and thank you, Heba, really for accepting to discuss this block. Let me say this book is really dear to me. I have had many books, but because it's my story. It's a story where I see how much rupture between two elite formations in the Arab world. The social science elite, and with it, if you like, nationalist and leftist group ally with, and religious elite, and with it sometimes there is masses, and sometimes not necessarily. No need today to talk about comparative masses between those who belong to religious elite and the others. But it's clear there is a rupture, and I grew up in Syria where I witnessed this rupture. I am myself Palestinian, so I was very close to some leftist Palestinian group, but in the same time living in Syria with a religious family, saying how, and I went to study with Sheikh Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti and Nasruddin Albani in the same time. So you can imagine how cognitive dissonance you may have with this. So I think the Arab Spring also, we have a huge evidence how this the rupture between and mistrust between these two elite formations, to the point that one elite opted to ally itself with the military to slaughter the other one and put the other in the prison, and then say, let's come and dialogue. So I don't want this kind of dialogue where we don't have the same legitimacy in the public sphere. So this book is a call for, can we put a good basis of engaging our sciences in the era of pluralism, where there is no one truth, in the era where the interdisciplinarity, we go in this direction. So talking about interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, can we imagine that this apply to علوم الشرع? So let's say Sharia science. I don't like religious science because I think all sciences can be religious and all sciences can be non-religious. So again, I mean, I will not enter into this blender of vocabulary. What is important, what we put inside of this. So we know that you have faculty of Sharia, what they study. Often this faculty of Sharia, they are social science free space. It means no social science. Even when there is a humanities like history or philosophy. History, for instance, I don't know if we consider the history of the Prophet Muhammad as a humanity course. But if it is only based on Sirat ibn Hisham, without crossing this with other, if you like, literature, it means that I doubt it is. You can count it among humanities. So you have, of course, sometimes it's very rare to find a course in ethics, for instance, ethics. And when you have, like in Lebanon, for instance, in one of the university, I wish they don't have this because it's so apologetic. It's always to say, look, human rights declaration said this. Christian said this, the Confucianist, Confucian people said this, and look, Islam, we are pioneer before them, etc. It's written in a very apologetic, ideological, and so I think no need for me as a social scientist to come and to say there is a crisis of Sharia education, higher education in the university. I think I rely so much on somebody like Muhammad Hilali. He was the dean of Faculty of Sharia in Aleppo University. I rely in many. Actually, the books is really, I try as much as I can to bring quotes from those who witness, who are in the field and feel that there is something wrong in higher education curriculum of Sharia. I can say from now until tomorrow morning about the crisis of social sciences. So I'm not giving lesson to the other saying, look how beautiful we are. I can, and I think I announced in the book that it will be my next book, but I changed. I have another agenda for different reason. I mean, but what I want to say that in fact we need to engage these two different fields together, but how? So this is the big question: how? So I went through a kind of a long assessment, content analysis of literature on Islamization of knowledge. Islamization, I don't know how much you are familiar. Late Ismail Farouqi, the Palestinian philosopher, and his institutional organ, IIIT, International Islamic Thought Institute, Institute of Thought, International Islamic Institute of Thought, that, if you like, launched this agenda of Islamization of knowledge. I think Ismail Farouqi like Edward Said, like Wael Halla, they are not responsible how people use their thought. I think Ismail Farouqi, when launched his project, it was very clear that we need to understand the Western science before try to do something. While, if you like, quickly, Naqib al-Attas, Sayyid Naqib al-Attas in Malaysia, captured the message of Farouqi and distorted that. In fact, it's so suspicious about the other sciences, and he wanted, actually, he looked at it in a dichotomous way. And I think when I look to the literature review, when I review literature on things on Islamization of knowledge written not only IIIT but in the Arab world, because you have many scholars, they espouse this approach. I found really it's very dichotomous, it's not useful. And again, I am someone who I start in my chapter and say, I don't have any problem. Somebody called Islamic psychology, Islamic sociology. I don't have problem with Christian economics. I don't have problem with Assyrian anthropology. I don't have problem with that. But show me how you will use this label not to cut yourself from the mission of your science, which always has some premises of universalism. And I maintain this, and I defend this. And of course, there is the conscience issue. And the conscience in all sciences, where you should bring your culture, you should bring your, and religion is inherent part of the culture. And the history and social classes and all this will factor in when you study. So I criticize the outcome of the Islamization of knowledge, and to give a credit to IIIT, they are not anymore using this. They are using integration of knowledge, which is for me it's fine. But how you will do it? For instance, when I study in Malaysia, IUM, International Islamic University of Malaysia, which is the laboratory for realizing this project, Islamization of knowledge. It was very clear from very clear from this university. Yeah, I'm so glad my dear friend Professor Sonar with us. Yeah. Okay. So, hello. Yeah. So I hope he will introduce himself later on. Yeah. So when I look to Islamic International Islamic University of Malaysia, this laboratory of Islamization of knowledge, I found that there is really a problem with the early generation, the founder generation, the way they wanted to Islamize knowledge, and in end of the day, in any case, we can analyze the output, and the output is really not really very important. While the new generation of how they understand the integration of knowledge, I think they are wonderful, and I will talk a little bit in the end. But so here, where I will move to my last point, which really very important point. So I said, if I am critical to Islamization of knowledge, so how I will interact these different discipline and field. So I use an approach. First of all, the shortcut approach is called ecology of knowledge. It means ecology, there is, you need to factor in religion, culture, social classes, politics, what the meaning of producing knowledge in authoritarian countries. I was talking with Muhammad, is so impacting the way you produce knowledge, whether you do it in democratic countries, etc. So a knowledge which take into account all this aspect. But the approach called separation, connection, and multiple praxis. I first inspired so much by the Egyptian philosopher Samir Abu Zaid, but I developed his, if you like, the way he see the connection, even in a very different ways. So, first of all, I don't believe that there is one epistemology for all sciences. So all this, I mean, when you read a lot of literature in Islam al-Ma'rifi, you feel good. Okay, you say unicity of Earth, and with unicity it means that all sciences can work on the same way. This is actually the ontological level, and absolutely there is ontology. Okay, but ontology is small things compared to how to validate knowledge about something, about knowledge about the history, fiqh, about there is epistemology about that. There is علم التجريح, how to read الحديث. There is also epistemology for sociology. There is other epistemology for psychology. Even there is another for medicine and so on. So I think we need to respect each field and science by its own epistemology. So we start by separating things. We have a problem. We have lockdown and corona pandemic. Okay, so I will take this problem, divide it into issue. One of issue where the medical doctor will work according to their epistemology. Other sociologists will see the effect on social relationship and lockdown. The economics will look all this. So this is, I don't want this I grew up in Syria بيسموا بوس لحى approach. Okay, so it's mishy, it's okay. No, I mean I don't want decoration of an article in sociology with a Quranic verse. I mean, I don't want to put religious text in a way that we don't know if it is really hypothesis from the ground or hypothesis because it's a wishful thinking. I don't like this. You do sociology, you do sociology. You do religious science, you do it properly. In fact, the separation is very analytical, but at certain point we can join of them, and we can imagine some writing where you join things. But let me put it clearly that this is really respecting the epistemology of each science. And then when we study, the doctor bring some ideas about how to protect society from contamination, when economists, sociologists, etc., all bring this, where religious scholars come and bring also some knowledge considered like divine knowledge. All this is when they did each one in a parallel way, there is a connection. How the connection will done? Samir Abu Zaid talk about worldview. But in fact, when you read, so I read 8 books on Islamic worldview. Most of them, I mean, 2, 3 are taught in International University, International Islamic University of Malaysia, IUM. And so when you read this Islamic worldview, it becomes everything is Islamic worldview. The veil is a Islamic worldview. Anything. I mean, it's not so. It's a way. It's a way of. It's not an ontology. I mean, I do understand what is worldview, but if you put it in a very tight, firm perspective, become terrible. This is why I prefer another phenomenological word, life words. And I invite you to read the book of Muhammad Bami on life words of Islam, where what is the difference? Life words is something through the history influence me, but not necessarily as a rules, as a standardized rules, but praxis, experience. I took the experience of my ancestors from Islam, but also other things. Life words. It's not about religion. It's about culture. Well, culture, you factor in other things. So what I'm trying to say that we want to be consistent, our thought with our reality. So here, where I don't feel that there is a science will force to another science, and don't be afraid, because in the end of the day, there is a way of resolving the problem. There is we can refer to parliament, we can refer to consensus, public opinion. So in the end of the day, it's not the scientists per se who are imposing their view. There is a way of resolving. This is why I go to the third phase, which is multiple actions or multiple praxis. Why multiple praxis? Because the outcome should be always thinking about citizens, and there is a way of thinking what kind of policy today we will issue to counter the pandemic, for instance, but also advocacy for da'wah for the believers. So always I should think in terms of citizenship and da'wah. But I can think in other, there is other stakeholders. I can think in terms of ummah. Okay, so it's not, but at least minimum, I always need to distinguish between citizens and believer. So the message can always, I advocate something for believer, but it's not binding to everyone. And I can put for the citizens something broader. It's not the same argument. It's very important. It could be the same thing, but the same outcome. I can convince people why they should look themselves down, but I don't use the same argument. For the citizens, if I live in Lebanon, I don't bring a Quranic verse to convince the Christian how to do it. Okay, so this kind of things. I will stop here, but just to show you that there is a way of organizing this encounter between religious science, quote unquote, and social science. We can do it like that. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I mean, what is very interesting in the discussion with religious people, they come with the faculty of Sharia, professors. They tell you, yeah, but what, as if Lutfi Sonar, sociologists come and say homosexuality is something biological, so it's not cultural. No, they don't say that. They say if they come and they say we should adopt homosexuality, etc. I said he is not supposed to say this. He can say that I did a research where I see there is a biological part of gay community, and it's not true. For instance, what often you hear in the Friday sermon, preachers say this is fascination of the West. It's not true. So you need to know, really, this is, you know, Kinsey, when Kinsey proved that there is a biological part of desire to the same sex, he did a work which lasts many, many years in many, many countries. So it's not, so you need to know this. Okay, so don't be afraid. If we know that there is a biological basis of homosexuality, doesn't mean that tomorrow it will be legalized or tomorrow it should be accepted. Because this is, we should discuss this within a life words or the world view, if you like, in a pluralistic world view in a country where we live, where, of course, tradition, habits, our respect of divine knowledge, whether this divine knowledge is fixed in its aspect, is not fixed, all this will be factored in discussing something and get a final position. Instead, I mean, either we do this or we keep two discourse. One discourse say all this gay people, we should put the fire on them and they are Western oriented and spy of the imperialism, etc. And the others say, oh, look, this backward people, they live in 6th century, they didn't develop. We can continue like this, and people will vote for those backward people, etc. Because we know on a statistic that homosexuality is not accepted. But what I said, we need to engage with us and put a basis of bringing different arguments, come from textual repertoire, sociological repertoire, and legal repertoires, and I think all are capable of doing it, including the Islamists. We saw in Tunisia how discourse of those who didn't want to change the inheritance law, how they use many arguments, and they respect the public sphere, and they respect that Tunisian. Some of them, they are not convinced by saying there is a clear-cut verse about the way we will distribute the inheritance. They talk about sociological concept, etc. So if you like, the way I am talking about separation is analytical. But of course, anyone in religious science can do sociology. And any sociologist can also take into account the heritage and the worldview of his or her society. I stop here.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I took more time, I think.
No, of course not. Thank you so much, Dr. Sari Hanafi. This is just a reminder, if you have, I'm sure many of you guys have many questions. Just write them down, keep them in mind, so that when we return after the break, you will have them still fresh. I give the floor to Dr. Heba. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure really to sit on the same panel with Professor Sari Hanafi. It's a great honor. And it's also a great honor to be engaged in such a discussion because it's like something that is all the time one of our concerns usually. And I still remember Dr. Heba Raouf, who did not teach me but taught my professors, and the struggles he had in order to introduce actually the opposite, to introduce the Islamic sciences to the social sciences realm, while we are talking to a great extent how to introduce social sciences to the Islamic studies and to the study of Sharia and the fuqaha and the fatwa, etc. So at that time, during the 50s and 60s, the colleges were not teaching anything about Islamic heritage in terms of science and methodology. And when he tried to introduce it in terms of political science, to go back to the writings of different scholars and try to introduce Adab al-Dunya wa Din, Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniya, and other books, and Al-Ghazali's work and Ibn Taymiyyah's work, etc., he was faced by opposition in the department. So as much as you're talking about the praxis, there is also the dimension of the logistics. I mean, who creates knowledge, how knowledge is produced, And as much as we say, you know, most of the time the critique towards Islamic sciences is they are hierarchical, you know, there are these structures and we have to liberate them from the traditions, etc. I think that we should also look at the fact that in the course of history, knowledge needed at all times to be sort of supported by the people who are producing knowledge, to be supported by finances, to be given spaces, to be granted rights, you know, the right of objectivity and the right to say whatever they find without being terrorized by political systems or traditional structures or whatever. So there is a dimension of how we can understand history. And for those who are interested in reading what I consider to be the background for your book, you know, like how did we reach this split in a way? I think that the work of George Maqdisi is very important. You know, the rise of colleges in Islamic history and the rise of humanism in Islamic history. But also, I mean, George Maqdisi is very well known. He has been translated recently by Madarat into Arabic. But also one of the important books, actually, because they are merging different traditions across history and how they basically started developing, etc., is the work of a Turkish scholar who was a student of Fazlur Rahman, who is Professor Alp Arslan Ashikrinj. And he wrote a very interesting book, and I mean his work is around these issues basically, and his work is on the scientific tradition, the emergence of scientific tradition in Islam, and he's basically taking it across history. You know, how we started by the emergence of, I mean, the emergence of philosophy sometimes is in the historiography is basically before the emergence of mazhabs, you know, and how logic was introduced and how the different mazhabs emerged and how they emerged within, if you want to borrow Marshall Hutchison, term, how they emerged also in different Islamicate contexts, you know, and how it's not only in knowledge, it's not only about ontology and methodology and epistemology, it's also about the imagination, the mood, something that we call sometimes in political theory the mood. There is a postmodern mood at one point. There is a linguistic turn, as they say in social sciences today. You know, there is an interest in sexuality, the body, the physique, the rise of the physical, etc., and sexuality included, for example, as you gave some examples. I mean, in social sciences today, there are these trends in a way, and the linguistic, of course, is one of the most important ones. And here we have the phenomenological, for example. And I will talk a bit later about how what you are requiring or requesting is actually extremely difficult, not impossible, but difficult because of political reasons. You are a sociologist, I'm a political scientist, so I look at power all the time and the maps of power. And I think that this is a dilemma. One of the things that I will come back to, I hope you remind me with that, is that when you took the examples, you studied like in Morocco, in Malaysia, in Jordan, in other cases, what is taught under the title of Islamic studies, Islamic sciences, etc. But actually, I would be very interested in seeing the transactions. You know, who goes where? Who actually, like we always know that the Islamic University in Pakistan was established basically by Egyptians. Dr. Hassan al-Shafi'i and other scholars went with him, and we have prominent names who contributed heavily. Of course, there were Pakistani scholars, and they were not running out of scholars there. But you have this sort of interaction. Sheikh Ghazali went to Algeria, and he reshaped the Islamic studies sort of imaginary in Algeria. Until today, he is mentioned most of the time when I read something from Algerian scholars, his name is mentioned here and there. You know, it's like, how about the relations between these different? We have this in the studies of mazhabs, you know, where the mazhabs emerged and then how they developed and then how they spread and then who became, and the center of the mazhab moved from one place to the other, you know, but we don't have this when it comes to our understanding of the contemporary Islamic studies, how they, at least in the case of Egypt, we have the history of the establishment of Darul Ulum. So we had Al-Azhar, and then during the time of colonialism, Darul Ulum was established to combine literary studies with Islamic studies, and we didn't have this Islamic studies, you know, we had religious studies. So I would be very much interested in seeing the relation between the different hubs of knowledge in the Muslim world, and why, for example, specifically, there is this advancement that you mentioned in terms of bringing in some insights from other methods and social science, etc., in Morocco. Why not in Egypt? Why not in Jordan? What are the boundaries? What are the conditions that are curbing the understanding and the interaction and the critical development of ideas that might be opposing that? I mean, you mentioned, for example, adab. You know, it's very interesting that Taha Abdurrahman, or Abdurrahman Taha, wrote this book about Dinul Haya. You know, he called it the religion of Haya, the religion that is based on an understanding of ethics. But around it, he merged the different sort of ideas and the pillars of the understanding from an Islamic perspective. And I think that this is important. This is number one for further sort of development of following who went where, what were the connections along the mazhab, along the nationality, and how can we see, do we have a scientific ecumen? You know, do we have this social and I mean Islamic sciences in the Muslim world? And then you pinpoint in every circle where there is a relation with social sciences and where there is not, and why. Why are people more closed, you know? And what type of social sciences developed in this and that case in the same location? You know, I mean, the social sciences in Morocco, for example, it's completely sort of francophonized in a way. Why this gap in this country, though actually there is an interest on behalf of those who are studying Islamic sciences in opening up to new perspectives, etc. The impact, for example, of who got his PhD from where. Where is the influence? So you will find the francophonic impact in the Maghreb, but you will find, for example, interestingly, in the Egyptian case, philosophy is very much affected by the French and the Germans. I mean, there is a German presence of the engagement with philosophy. You know, it's basically Germany and England, and not necessarily the French. And then look to the other sides. What about Jordan? What about, I mean, what are the schools with which those in social sciences get engaged, and how far or close is in Beirut, for example? I mean, Dr. Adwan al-Said, he studied in Germany for a while, and this German tradition of the understanding of Islamic sciences, you know, and the German Orientalist sort of or Islamic studies perspective is there. He engages with it critically, but it's like it's not necessarily another type of school, etc. So I think that there are more maps. I mean, you did the most important work is to draw the map, and then you have to start moving this map to become an interactive map. You know, who went where, which tradition is dominant, why is it so? Because of colonialism or because of the nature of the country that is offering more and more scholarships? Yani we have now between Al-Azhar and there is a chevening scholarship, I think, or whatever they call it, but there is an agreement between Al-Azhar and the UK. They send Azharite graduates to get PhD and MA from the UK. So if you are assuming that there is quite a traditional way of studying Islamic studies in Al-Azhar, of course logic is taught, philosophy is taught, comparative religion is taught. We can have our own remarks regarding to which degree is there a serious engagement, do they host, you know, scholars from abroad to give lectures and then the students engage. I mean, this is like the way the art is being produced and developed, etc. But think about someone going from Al-Azhar. Think about the socioeconomic background of those people, basically middle class, lower middle class, you know, sometimes from rural areas. I mean, it's a long story, why we reach that. Because 100 years ago, it was the biggest families in the Delta and in the Upper Egypt that used to make sure that one of them is a scholar. And now, with the rise of Western education, you know, those who engage or enroll in Azharite system come basically from middle class and lower, not the upper class. Recently, we had language Azharite schools, but this is a very small number of schools. So in this case, how would the impact of this engagement, great, you send them to get a PhD or an MA from the UK or from the United States, also Fulbright has got these scholarships for people in Islamic studies, etc. But at the end of the day, I mean, how can they bring together this? You take someone from the Department of Tafsir and you throw them in the hands of a scholar of phenomenology in Berlin. And he tells them, okay, let's study Quran from a phenomenological perspective. I mean, is this going to grant a balanced, with that system of authority, a balanced critical perspective and engagement that basically the two parties are, you know, equals in a way in producing the knowledge. I have questions regarding that, and I wish that people would have the opportunities, but it's also about power. The other thing, when we think about Islamic sciences generally, and social sciences, of course, because knowledge, basically, I mean, we are not coming from Mars, when we're talking about Islamic sciences, there is a challenge from within. I see it from within, not only regarding Islamization of knowledge, but regarding which world are we looking into. And here I have two points to mention. The first thing, that why do we say engagement between Islamic sciences and social sciences? Actually, Islamic sciences is in dire need of engaging with natural sciences. Quantum physics, the developments of imagining the world, not only by negating, saying, no, there was no Big Bang, it was a creation of Allah. It's not about this. It's also about how do we see the developments and achievements, and where is fact and where is theory there, and how we can have a very quiet and decent engagement with that. I mean, we have a huge debate regarding Darwinism, for example, and many scholars started addressing this now. Some social scientists started producing, knowledge about how we have in Islamic history some schools that basically, were trying to find a way in between, etc. But it's more than that. And there is this, when I started preparing for this engagement, I also, besides reading the book, I read the book of Jerome Kagan, when he wrote about the three cultures: natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. And he himself is a psychologist, but also he was very much interested in the impact of biology on psychology. And here I would mention, for example, wouldn't the Muslim scholars be interested in thinking about not only the change of urf, but also neurodiversity? People are not the same. They think differently. The way their minds function is different. Some people are more into, numbers. I am a person who turns off completely when she sees numbers completely. And I float with concepts. And when I teach, I keep telling my students, do you see how this concept has developed? And they look at the ceiling and they don't know what I'm seeing, etc. So it's like people think differently. Would that have an impact on the fatwa, for example? Would that have an impact on the way the Islamic sciences address the issue of human will? Al-kasb, the theories of kasb in a world where actually people are, in a way, somehow, how can I say it, programmed neurologically through the pictures, the speed of the images online, and everything that you see on Facebook or social media, etc., how it affects our sort of not only our cognition, but our imagination. So this is one thing. The second thing is like, we should bring more than that. Even there is that book, Les Trois Écritures, language, numbers, and codes. So it's not only about the different fields and social sciences and other sciences, but also about how the numbers matter. Numbers in terms of quantification. I mean, I rarely find in the Islamic sciences someone doing empirical studies or quantitative work. It's all about words and words and words and words and, daring ideas or traditional reactions. I mean, did you do some research about what you are studying? Especially in issues, for example, of women, of migration. I mean, do the muftis have social sciences in the office telling them, okay, we now are requested to issue a fatwa about women's work? Or recently, Sheikh al-Azhar, حق الكد والسعاية, this fatwa about that women should have, if they separate from their men by divorce, if she has been a working woman, she has the right to some of the assets of the family. Because usually women, especially in the East, they are very much reluctant or shy to say, if we are going to build a house, it needs to be written, under both names. So they just, sacrifice. And then when the divorce takes place, they are told, I'm the man and I take everything. So the fatwa is there. But was the fatwa accompanied actually by statistics regarding how many women, and also the statistics of relating this to something else? I'm not celebrating that 90% of women are working in a society, by the way, because if parallel to that, the delinquency, youth delinquency is rising, then there is an issue. And this is exactly what Fukuyama mentioned when he wrote a very interesting book that was basically overlooked. We all love conflict. So we focused on end of history, confrontation with the East and Islam, But he has a book titled The Great Disruption. And he was attacked by feminists because he said that while we have rising participation of women in politics and economy, we also have a breakup of the family and rising youth delinquency. You know, there is something here that we should explore. He's just said explore. And then, whoo, there was that wave of feminists. What are you implying? You know, we want to bring us back home. No, I mean, it's like if this is happening, then we should sit and discuss. Not that women are incapable, which is the most famous sort of argument of some of our dear Salafi brothers, you know. No, that women are capable. But what about the full capability of the society in producing adab, in producing justice, in producing fairness towards children? I mean, in Germany, for example, there is no place to put your child if he's under 2 years old. Or you must be a millionaire to get yourself a nanny and pay a lot of money. So most of German women have to actually take time off in the first 2 years, which is essential. Because this is traditionally something is related to the German culture, you know, that this upbringing, Bildung, you know, and the education of the children in that age, and women should be responsible for that, etc. So we should negotiate. I mean, we should have statistics and say, hey, women, we love very much, or women should say, well, we are very interested in working and participating, but we need to have a scheme that is supporting us. It doesn't mean that women have to go back home necessarily, depending on the condition and the age, etc., and the sector. But like, what do you grant me if I stay at home and then I want to catch up again? Do you retrain me, rehabilitate me to go back to the market, etc., and to be competitive? And it's very complicated than just, you know, sit at home or liberation, go out and find your, realize yourself. So statistics is not there. The quantitative is not there. The empirical is not there. What is not there as well? Narratives. I mean, do scholars in Islam do what Umar ibn al-Khattab did when he went sort of walking in Medina, and then he heard this woman saying, oh, if it was not for the piety and fear of Allah, I would have hosted a man on this bed because my man has been in jihad for a long time. And then he didn't just, you know, knock at her door and say, are you silly or something? Men are fighting for Islam and you're thinking about sex. And no, he went back to Hafsa and said to her, for how long can women be actually patient without having sex with their husbands? And she said, 3 months. I mean, if this happens today, actually, some women can be very happy for a year or two, and some women wouldn't be happy for more than a month. So you have to take the narrative. Here, listen to the people, make surveys, and then you have the data, and then you as a mufti or as a scholar say, well, guys, we have to take the sort of the average, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. In Saudi Arabia, when people were working in Saudi Arabia, this sort of migration to work to the oil countries, in many situations, men were not allowed to accompany families. I mean, talk to me more about Islamic Sharia and Islamic fiqh, you know, and it's following up what's going on. Yani. This is ABC and non-Islamic. Yani. But this happened because, I mean, it's an opinion or it's a political decision, etc. Another point that is important, what is knowledge about? I mean, whether social sciences, Islamic sciences, natural sciences, arts, creative sort of writing and literature, etc. What is it about? It's about order. It's about thinking of the world in an orderly manner, and then in each and every sphere or field of study, basically trying to organize knowledge in a way. Methodology, approaches, subject matter, verification, you know, it's about organizing. And there is a subtle assumption in Islamic studies, and this is something that the project that you are embarking on needs to address, because it's going to be a serious problem, and it will need a lot of negotiation. That there is an assumption that because there is the unity of God in our Islamic understanding, that the order of things is hierarchical somehow. Yani that the world, there is a hierarchical sort of structure of the world. Humans come first and then the rest, and then we have istikhlaf. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything, so there is that harmony between the different components. Malakutu samawati wal ard. But actually this does not necessarily mean that there is no hierarchy. I mean, reimagining so many things through the hierarchical perspective will necessitate a lot of ijtihad by the Islamic sciences that they have to do before embarking on engaging with social sciences and natural sciences. And it's important also to think about what we mean by chaos. the notion of fitna is so powerful in the backbone of Islamic sciences when it comes to family structures, when it comes to political structures, when it comes to economic structures. I mean, there is that obsession that we have an order, and this order is very tight and well sort of managed. Otherwise, things will go out of control. But I think that more and more we are realizing that we are living today in a world where not necessarily the creation itself as we see it in terms of sunan, in terms of exploring النظر والتدبر والتفكر في خلق الله, that it is hierarchical or in one order. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create different orders and they have this harmony, but what type of order? I've been reflecting not only about the notion of nomos, because nomos implies somehow law, but it can also imply from our perspective sunan, and it can imply a lot of insights into human nature. But also I've been thinking about the notion of malakut. Malakutu samawati wal ard. And there are 4 verses in the Quran, 2 that talk about malakutu samawati wal ard, and 2 that talk about malakutu kulli shay. And there are 2 ways to understand malakutu kulli shay. Malakutu kulli shay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the malakut of everything, the collectivity of everything. And then the question would be, how do we imagine the order in different fields and spheres, the visible and the non-visible, etc. And malakutu kulli shay. That it can also mean that every shay has got its own malakut. Everything that Allah created has got its own order. And then the qudratullah is that everything is harmonious, but everything has got its own order. And this will open a lot of understanding. Now they are talking in social sciences about post-anthropocentric social sciences. We have been over-occupied with humans, and now we should give more attention to animals' rights and citizenship. Should give more attention to machines. So machines and robots might also gain citizenship and have a say in decision-making quickly, quite soon. And then algorithms and artificial intelligence as tools, okay? And I think that this necessitates that we also look outside the realm of the human, the realm of the malakut. And this is why I think natural sciences are important to be negotiated as well and to be understood by Islamic sciences. How do we imagine the world developing? And how do we understand the role of the humans, not to turn the post-anthropocentric to a complete equality between the human, the machine, and animals? Because this is different from how we perceive the world. We perceive it differently. Not necessarily that humans are on top of everything and everything is below them, but actually there is this sort of hierarchy in a way. And at one point, we are actually tied. Our hands are tied. At one point, in some circumstances and conditions in Islam, we have no right to actually come near the world of animals during Hajj and in other circumstances. Or you have no right to actually find yourself hunt, for example, if you don't need to eat. It's not for fun, that you enter the other realms and aggress. You are given the license for a specific reason to have food. What about al-halal al-tayyib? Is it acceptable that we breed animals in a more modern way so that they are brought up without this rahmah? They are just, in places where, of course, you have read about how chicken that you eat and you buy from the supermarket are produced, basically, so it's very un-Islamic. So it's halal, but it's not tayyib. And this is why many people are going back to small farms and buying, meat and chicken from there, because they have been brought up in an environment that is making the system function in this harmony, etc. And I think that social sciences and Islamic sciences both have a problem with that. And while they should negotiate the problems between them, they also negotiate both their problem mutually with the universe. How do we imagine the world, and how are we thinking about it?
Thank you so much. In fact, thank you. I cannot thank you more, really, Heba, for your thorough reading of your book. even when you make my things hard. I mean, you make things sometimes difficult and impossible, this encounter. But I think your overarching message that there is a conditions in terms of knowledge production and power structure we should discuss also to facilitate this encounter. So I fully agree in this broad things you said. I will actually I will bring an aspect I didn't talk about it, and maybe to engage with what you brought. First of all, just to say that I came to the International Sociological Association. I became a president with an agenda. My agenda is to connect sociology to moral philosophy. It means that I think we often talk about three epistemological imperatives, and I would like to insist that there is a fourth one. The three is the classically, the descriptive. You do the empirical to describe a social phenomenon, and then the conceptual. You conceptualize, you create categories, and then you interpret. So this is the third epistemological imperative. But the fourth is normative. And we should not shy away and insist that there is a fourth epistemological imperative, which is normative. We should stand with marginalized people. We should stand with civil society. We should stand with those whose power abuse them and things like that. So the same project I have, connecting sociology to moral philosophy, this book say you need to connect this way of thinking about religion with an ethical thought. So if you like, also something I didn't talk about it, that we need an ethical approach to religion and not only fiqhi approach to religion. And just to make it clear, so I'm not saying ethics is over, let's say, rights, tuqus, ibadat. No, I'm not saying. I think ibadat is inherent part of the ethical project of any religion, because it's a training. It's training. When you pray 5 times, you think about always God. When you fast 1 month, you think about poor and things like that. So if you like, I think if we want to have an ethical approach, and not an ethical, a moral approach to religion, in that case, we need the help of other sciences, because morality, there is 2 things in morality. There is virtues, which is often universal, even if I say this is really Islam insists in rahma and al-adl, justice and mercy, but in most of the religions also insist on this. This is why I consider Surah Al-An'am وَتَلِّ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. I mean, it's a Quranic verse to say, look, what I ask you non-believer, just to be consistent with yourself. You think about God, but also, and then reciting many virtues about orphanage, respecting parents, etc., etc. So it's a fantastic religion. Really the Quran came to say we have a common socle, but then I have something specific. And here really it's very important. Mu'taz al-Khatib, for instance, he found 2 verses in the Quran in his article آيات الأخلاق وآيات الأحكام in the Quran to see that we have a foundation, for instance. خذوا العفو. For him, خذوا العفو as if it is mercy over justice. It's very interesting. I mean, so this is, if you like, there is a virtue, and then there is a moral dilemmas. And often in our everyday life, we face moral dilemmas. So it's not moral values and virtue, fadail. How we combine between for instance, courage and not to be for instance, how much I can be generous for Syrian refugees in Lebanon without undermining the other category of Lebanese population. How I will deal with this? This is a moral dilemma. So moral dilemma, you need the help of all sciences, including Islamic science, to think about morality.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. Just to say that, in fact, what is new that we sociologically we notice that people more and more they are divert in their religiosity. They bring emotional argument. So it's not about rationality. It's not about what the sheikh told us and they apply. No, they deploy different form of logic. So this is what is new in our modernity, late modernity. How we will address this? So we address it in a way that I describe it, if you like. Yeah, I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your introduction. Dr. Heba, if you have something to add, I'll give you 2 minutes, and then we'll open the floor.
Very quickly. I think that one of the categories that Professor Sari Hanafi used is the traditional, and the Salafi, and the third school that you mentioned in your Al-Maqasidi. And I think that 2 schools need to be added, Shia, and I think that the Hawza was very much aware of the importance of linking with Western philosophy and social sciences. So they are heavily into that more than maybe some of the Sunni circles that you mentioned. And the second one is the Sufi. And I think that there is so much that Sufism can introduce. Sufism, of course, we have 2 types of Sufism, the Sufism of popular practices, etc., and the Sufism that is also a sort of, how do we call it, al-mundabit bil-sharia, yani the Sufism that where scholars actually gave attention. And one of the things that usually Al-Ghazali is mentioned as a Sufi or as belonging to the Sufi tradition. Al-Ghazali was also Usuli. So we don't have this sort of division that is usually found in some books that simplify a bit. Many of them were encyclopedic, basically, and they were into philosophy, they were into usul, they were into Sufism and practices, etc. So these are 2 points. The other thing that I don't think it's the endeavor of talking about introducing adab and akhlaq is as simple as it sounds. 2 difficulties arise here. It was also suggested by Armando Salvatore. And it was interesting that he took the adab in the light of the Islamicate, and he said Muslims, when they made the futuh, the conquest, etc., or they spread Islam, there were traditions already in the society and the urf, etc., and they merged somehow. So we have the ecumene of Islam is larger than the ummah because it includes many ummahs as well. Since the beginning, since the Medina, there was that existence. But one of the dilemmas that he classified it somehow, and I can sort of sense that also from what you're saying, is that this is part of a soft secularism. You know, we are going to go into a secular public sphere where, like Habermas suggested, religion is welcomed as long as it uses the language of, secularism and expresses itself in an argumentative and deliberative manner that fits into the modern culture and the modern society. And I think here we can have a long discussion. And the second thing is the approach of moral philosophy actually has got also this not secular but materialistic, anthropocentric and positivist approach to ethics, which was called by Zygmunt Bauman morality without ethics. So it's like chosen moralities, So I am ethical and moral by defining what my morality is, and hence invented moralities, including partly what you have pointed to in terms of homosexuality, for example. They say we are as moral as everyone else because we decided we are doing it by consent. So it makes it moral because it by consent, for example. And this opens a lot of discussions. So I think that what we classify under adab is not, it will raise, to be aware that this discussion will go into different directions and will need a lot of negotiation as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heba and Dr. Sari Hanafi. If I may open the floor now for questions, please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Sari, Dr. Heba, for the informative speech. I have two questions, one for Dr. Heba and one for Dr. Sari. Let me begin with Dr. Heba. You mentioned a wonderful concept, which is al-malakut and al-tanahum. And I heard one scholar who rephrased it in, we can call al-malakut is al-qada, or the order, and al-tanahum is al-qadar. And he referred to the example of in Surah Al-Kahf about the story between Al-Khidr and Musa, and the dilemma of authority. Who has the upper hand? Is it the law and Al-Qada or the Qadr? So for example, the three examples, فَأَرَدْتُ أَنْ أَعِيبَهَا, it refers to Al-Khidr and Al-Qadr and Al-Tanaghu. فأردنا أن يبدلهم ربهما خير منه زكاة, both the authority of قضاء or law and the authority of قدر. فأراد ربك أن يبلغا أشدهما, the authority of law and قضاء. So which one has supposed to have, from your opinion, the upper hand, the malakut or التناغم in what do you perceive? My question to Dr. Sari is about the ethics and morality and how we should approach them or teach them in the colleges or in the society. Keeping in mind the famous طرق in Islam, the Sufis, and what they call السلوك, علم السلوك. And it is very, if anybody look at it, it is very deep, takes a long of mujahada and long time of practice. So how can you, from academic point of view, how can you treat this kind of تراث or this kind of school of thought? Thank you.
Can we collect maybe? It's better.
Just
to get what is what people. How they and then we.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
no problem.
if
Dr. Heba, is that what you come up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Are there any other questions at this moment?
Yeah.
Dr. Affan.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Sari and Dr. Heba, for your comments. Actually, I have one comment and a question. The comment here, judging from your presentation, Dr. Sari, I found you that you are stressing separation rather than bridging between social sciences and Islamic studies. I mean, you suggest that we need to approach one phenomenon with different epistemologies based on the question that we are trying to study. So if there is a pandemic, so its question is economy, let's approach the pandemic by economists. If it's like morality of like how can we deal with this crisis, let's go for preaching and religious studies. So I saw till now that you are trying to emphasize the separation between domains, and each domain, each science should confine itself with a specific domain. So till now, I can't see the bridge, when and how the bridge will come between both sciences. The question here regarding, I see that you are trying to say that we can live with different epistemologies. And to some extent, we can borrow from the fact that in Islamic communities, we had different legal systems. So we have the Urf, we have the Islamic Sharia, and then we had the non-Muslims have the right to go to their own codes. But I think epistemology is something different, because even if we have different legal codes, at the end they have the same ontology. It's at the end we have the overarching paradigm is still there. But to approach, my question in short, how can we use different epistemologies without really having this fraction at the level of paradigm and ontology? Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, or shall we open the floor? Please go ahead.
Well, thank you to Dr. Heba and Dr. Sari for this approach. Really, I don't have a question, but it's like an advice for the youth. Well, what is your advice to youth who want to change the social attitudes in their communities, and how we face the modern thoughts that's entering our society, like ethics, the other things. So that's what I want to ask about, and thank you.
Thank you. Shall anyone add? Please go ahead.
Well, I have one question to Dr. Sari. Before you start to talk with Dr. Sari, I thought that, like Dr. Afan said, that Islamic studies and Sharia are with social sciences, are considered social sciences in Arab world. So I didn't know, how can we put them together while they are. It's a subcategory of the social sciences. So I thought that the West looked to Islamic studies and Sharia law in a very in a different way. So the question is, how the West look to our Islamic studies and the Sharia studies, like when they look to the other university or any other university or any like learning knowledge or seeking knowledge group, how do they think that how do you approach them in a magical way? That's the question.
Okay, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. The first question is that I need to know that what's the difference between your what you mentioned in the book, because we read the book actually. But what's the difference between it and between the Islamization of knowledge of Farouqi and the practice at IOM? So actually, I don't see any kind of difference between both of them. The second, I graduated from IIOM, from the Department of Economy, as you mentioned in the book. It's one of the best practices of Islamization, or the practice of between the it's like, as you mentioned, that it's kind of bringing social science with Islam, but actually during the studies there, we didn't see this kind of practice, especially even our scholars there, like Dr. Muhammad Islam Hanif, all of this, they are criticizing what the university producing. And so I'm not sure about how this is, you are trying to show that it's one of the best practices, but actually even inside the university, they are not agreeing with this kind of practice. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for all the insights. Sorry, for all the insights that you've shared with us. I have a question for Dr. Heba. You spoke about how knowledge is about order, and then you mentioned heterarchy as an alternative model for the hierarchical kind of. And so I was wondering if you could speak more to the hierarchical model, especially in terms of knowledge production and dissemination, especially that, and based on my understanding of hierarchical models, the authority is distributed. So I'd be very keen to understand how, in a way, despite that distribution of authority, we are still to maintain order.
Please, last question, and then I think we will open the floor for answers and perhaps revisit the questions later.
So first of all, thank you for this lecture. And I have a question, before we should link all sciences. But before linking them, do we actually, it's not going to happen like this. So there are steps that we have to take first. It's gonna happen, it's gonna take decades. But for example, in third world countries, how are you gonna promote this idea? How are you gonna link these sciences? While these sciences are most of them aren't even developed. We don't have statistics, we don't have researches. So how are we gonna do that? Right? Apart from convincing the people. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can bring the floor back first and then return to questions. But first bring the floor back to Dr. Sari Hanafi and Dr. Heba. If we may begin with Dr. Sari Hanafi and the many questions on epistemology, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, this will give me more time to spell out some complex issues. I will take the question not in order, and they are really connected, together. First of all, let me start by Islamization of knowledge, and very connected to your question, Muhammad. What is the difference? I think if you read the first project, the steps, maybe it's not very different, but actually there is a difference even in the first blueprint of Al-Faruqi. But when this project taken and how implemented is very different from this. I give you example. Take the work of Muhammad Amizian, for instance, about the first work published by Ma'had al-Fikr al-Islami. Okay, so he said very clearly, the issue of mixity in the school should not be studied in social science because we have a clear-cut fiqh about mixity. I mean, this is unacceptable for me. Again, I can be really very conservative and advocate for non-mixity, but I found this is unacceptable. When the problem, the thought is so much framed in a sharp dichotomy between Western knowledge and Islamic knowledge. So much is really unuseful. It's and we lie on ourselves because Heba and other talking about really whether we have a conducive environment to produce research. Absolutely true. So all this dichotomy is really killing the possibility It's identity politics. And again, a lot of things is really identity politics. I mean, when I spend many in IOM, they are so happy when say the unicity of God and unicity and unicity of epistemology. It's really like Malik ibn Nabi talk. Bring comfort, if you like, anaka, how it was translated, one of his book. So, but it's not helpful. It's really not helpful. It's not helpful to, I mean, I am editor of Arab Journal of Sociology. I just take citation of Ibn Khaldun. Most of the citation is decorative. If today we want to understand Sisi or Qais Said or I don't know of Macron using the concept of Asabiya alone, it's really a simplification of what is political phenomenon today and what is allegiances, etc. Again, we can use very smartly Ibn Khaldun. I think Sayyid Farid al-Attas, his call that I combine. I mean, it's not either Marx or Ibn Khaldun, but how I understand the reality using different theories. So this is I found that this is really unhelpful, losing time in identity politics. You know, I have one of, it's not only people coming from Sharia, but people coming from an post-colonial discourse. Sometimes I talk about abuse of post-colonial discourse. When somebody, a colleague say, we should not teach Durkheim because Durkheim never acknowledged colonialism, Algerian colonialism. Okay, I mean, I would never, okay, so again, this creating this dichotomy, dwelling in the level of social philosophy without doing research, this is what Islamization of knowledge did so much. Is there some fruits? Yes, absolutely. In Malaysia, for instance, this concept of multiculturalism, they create Malaysian name which come from the Arabic, but they change. I forgot it will come in 1 second. And they did a social peace in the society. When I visited Islamic Bank in Malaysia and I found so much Indian and Chinese, it means it's a success story. That you have a bank, Islamic bank, attracting others. So if you like, but why? Because there is a second generation. I think in Malaysia is the second generation. Second generation, they understood Islamization of knowledge like a thesis I read is acknowledging the importance of religion. For instance, breast cancer, studying breast cancer in a village. To see how reciting Quran alleviate the pain of women, while the same topic I found it in France. A Tunisian scholar never bring religiosity of people as a factors. So this is, if you like, this is the bridge you can do by acknowledging the importance of religion, etc., and acknowledging local production, knowledge production. This is extremely important. And it's very funny that many of, because I did content analysis of PhD and master, so they always say we want to acknowledge the theoretical, local theoretical production or the Islamic or etc. But when you read, they don't. Why? Because we don't have much theorists. Frankly, I mean, this is again I have a book. It's called Knowledge Production in the Arab World: The Impossible Promise. All about knowledge, about social condition of knowledge production. It's not everything about epistemology. So this quickly bring me, Muhammad, to actually it's really the separation I suggest is really analytical, because in reality things doesn't happen like this. Just I will give an example, and I will give the synthesis. I study with my in that time research assistant Azam Tomi the debate about the gender equality in inheritance system in Tunisia. So you have President Sibsi wanted to change the law to make it equal. Okay, so although I mean historically even Bourguiba didn't change it, this etc. So it was a debate. There is two ways of seeing this debate. The second day, okay, so what happened? Sibsi asked for a committee, this committee of 10 people, they wrote a report. In this report, they say we should change it based on maqasid al-sharia. In the Quran, there is about slavery, and there is no anymore slavery. According to sociology, woman is working like, so using legal, sociological, and textual argument. The report, and this is what is very interesting, that they are secular, this group, except Salah Georgi, the other are etc. So they use textual, they refer to Islamic tradition because they know they cannot convince the other without Islamic tradition. So there is the first few pages about maqasid al-sharia, the way they understand maqasid al-sharia. Of course, it's not. Mohammed bin Salman used maqasid al-sharia. So okay, so it's not maqasid al-sharia like positive things. I mean, it's to take into account interest, public interest of itself. So what is very interesting that the other, those who don't want to change the law, I don't call them Islamists because Munsif al-Marzouqi was against. Many nationalists, etc. So those who are against, so we study all the debate in the TV, radio. So we didn't look to the savoir savant, the academic work. We work only media. So 54 YouTube, etc. We analyze them. What is very interesting that the other side, they have religious argument that this is should not be. There is a clear-cut verse should not be changed. But in any case, Tunisian woman, they brought sociological argument. Tunisian woman is not taking in charge the family after when the family is in need. So it's a male. It's a historically male function. So this is so they use this, and they use a legal one that the constitution say the religion of the state is Islam, so we should respect the Islamic code, etc. So they were so bloody civilized in discussion, and it was so civilized that they reached a little bit of compromise. To say, both of them, they said, look, no matter what we want the law, the other can people can write a testimony, wasiyi. Okay, so it's a very interesting. This is a way of debating these things. This is the bridging, I think, and the bridging is a fantastically take into account really the life words, the Tunisian life words in that time. Ghanouchi said beautiful things like, okay, if you are not convinced, let's go to parliament and or go to referendum. So I think by so I think it's very important how remember the book of Abdullah al-Malki, سيادة الأمة قبل سيادة الشريعة. There is a connection, if you like. It's that we can refer to the sovereignty of the Ummah. Yeah. So this is the way I think bridging, separation, bridging, and multiple praxis done in Tunisia. How happened in Egypt? The second day of the declaration of Sipsi that he wanted to change the law, Al-Azhar issue a statement. Go to that statement. What is it? Finished by those who wanted to change this verse. They are kuffar, something like that. So there is a way. Again, I am again. Life words is not one way. It's really a moral argumentation. Maybe the Egyptian is happy with that, but just to say we have two ways, and I think I prefer the Tunisian way, because Tunisian way bridge between different elite formation, and yeah. So this is, if you like, how we teach ethics and morality. This is a very good question. I think go to College of Islamic Studies in Hamad University. I think it's now it's a laboratory. Especially, I follow the work of Mu'taz al-Khatib. Just go to Mudawwanat al-Jazira and see how Mu'taz al-Khatib every Wednesday, instead of throwing fatwas, and this is why I like what you said. I mean, the Mufti. I mean, where is the discussion? Where is it? See how Mu'taz al-Khatib bring the ethical argumentation before bringing the fiqh, and it's very interesting. Sometimes he don't bring the fiqh because it's a way to say use your heart, okay? So, but it's very interesting. It's really, I think the whole master. You have a master of Islamic ethics in etc. Is to say ethics. We study ethics, and from it we derive a fiqh. Otherwise, the fiqh is juz'i. Is you take small things. It's not that. It's not this what fiqh al-waqi'. Fiqh al-waqi'. You need to study the morality. Maybe just one. So about ontology and epistemology, I think it's very important. Yes, you have. Look, sorry, but I will bring this example really amazing. French High Ethics Committee. It's a very prestigious one. You have people even from every religion. Muhammad Arkoun used to represent Muslims inside. So High Ethics, they voted against gay marriage. This 5 years ago, this story. A journalist called Levi Strauss, the famous anthropologist, asked him whether the basic form of family, and he studied family everywhere, composed by male, by wife, husband, and kids. And he refused to reply. And then the journalist talked with his one of his students, and he said, "Okay, Levi Strauss refused to reply. He didn't say." I said, "No, he refused to reply to my question." So he went and spent whole afternoon with Levi Strauss, discussed with him, etc. And in the end, I will tell you the outcome of the discussion in a few seconds. He told him, "Can I report publicly this?" He said no. And after 2 days, Levi Strauss called his etc. Say, "Yes, you can." So what happened? Levi Strauss, ontologically, his ontology, being in Christian Judaic sphere, is incapable to compromise the importance of the family. In the basic, this is why ontologically, this is he told his disciple, yes, I saw sometimes a family which is not composed like this, but it's very dangerous. So he something he say, even if my outcome is that there is, etc. I don't want this French society now to understand that the family can be anything. No, a family is husband, wife, and etc. It's very interesting. This is ontology, and I think we have ontological issues. I think it's very interesting. Sociologically, I found it in knowledge production. The family is very important for us. And I think even a study about economics, etc., the family enterprise, etc., I think the family is very important. And the way many knowledge production in the West about the social structure undermined family. So it's not, so I am not blind that there is ontological issues. So of course I will be aware. I will be aware, and I will be cautious that I will not throw the family with the water in the sea. Don't throw the baby with the water in the sea. In my sociology, I would never throw it like this. So yes, there is ontology, but suddenly ontology become everything. And the way you dress is ontology, etc. No, it's not. This is what. So epistemology is the validity of the argument and how you bring logic in your construction. All the work of all the Heba, how she said there is narrative, there is how to bring figures. All this is part of the epistemology so this is the epistemology. It's the validity of a statement. How you make a reasoning, sound reasoning in a discipline. And this is why I insist psychology is different of sociology. So don't worry. It's not only ilm al-hadith is different from sociology. I stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanafi. Dr. Heba, the floor is yours.
I'll try to be as short as possible. I will start with the question when you said that the hierarchy, I mentioned hierarchy is an alternative to hierarchy. I didn't say that. I said that there is hierarchy and there is hierarchy, and there are different ways of how they are ordered in different situations, in different historical moments, in different conditions, etc. And I would ask the question of the family, for example. I will not address the issue of gay marriage. This is not my interest here. But I will be looking at the fiqh, for example, and saying, how did the faqih imagine a family? There is always a wali. But what if there is no wali? If there is a widow in charge of children, and she has no brother, and her uncle lives somewhere else. She has a family. She has the family, the ties, but there is no presence of the wali in her life. She has to take things in her hand, and hence the fiqh gave her the ability to basically be responsible for the inheritance of the children, etc. And then you have someone living alone. I have a couple of friends who never got married. Their father died. They are now in their 60s. All the uncles and on both sides died. And are they a family? They are a family. And how do I treat them? How would the economy of the country treat them? How would they treat them in terms of how to pay electricity, how to pay taxes? You know, they live on the pension of their late father. You know, it's like, and this is the types of family that we have in our Muslim societies. I'm not talking about the other types that are rising. I'm talking about our understanding of the family. And here you have this hierarchy under the structure of sort of circles. I don't like the pyramids. You know, I'm Egyptian, but I don't like the pyramids way, because it's like it makes the tip of the pyramid and then the base, and then in between the black box, you know. So I'd rather see circles. So it's just about understanding the diversity of conditions. You find it in the fiqh, you find it in usul al-fiqh, you find it in al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya. You simply have to visualize it.
to be able to make diagrams and to open without feeling threatened, because we fear that there will be a fitna, we hold to one imaginary. Well, actually, we know that in fiqh there are so many types, you know, and how they interact with each other. And the authority, if I can't get my rights through the urf, I should get it through the court. But I don't change Sharia. And this is what I say always regarding inheritance, for example. If I'm not given my rights, and inheritance is a very complicated issue, because does the man pay from the inheritance to fulfill his responsibilities? No, my brother inherited from my father 15,000 Egyptian pounds. And I don't want to let you know how much money he gave me since the death of my father. It has nothing to do with the amount. It has to do with the structure and the responsibilities. It's a signal, it's a code, you know? But it's not about the amount. Yani once the amount is khalas, yani go find your way. I inherit that amount of money, I even gave it all to you. Now don't ask me about anything. It's not about that. There are systems, and the systems, some of them are zahir, and some of them are batin. Batin, not in terms of that they are ghaib, but batin in terms of you have to look for them. You have to grasp from the system of Sharia. And here comes to my mind Ziauddin Sardar. Quite early, maybe in the late 80s, beginning of the 90s, he published a book, Islamic Futures. And this book is very valuable, because early enough, it made me realize when he used in one of the chapters this brilliant title when he said, Sharia as a problem-solving methodology. Sharia is a problem-solving. It's not to create problems, it's to solve problems. And by solving the problems, the ethical is not above. The ethical is integrated in every action. And sometimes we have the akhafu dararain. Sometimes you have to weigh and balance the interests, etc. So it's complicated. Regarding, so I hope you understood what I mean. It's not a replacement, it's a complexity, basically, to see.
The least, yeah. خفض الضرر, the least evil.
The less evil. Not everything is black and white. Many shades of gray. And the fuqaha address that. They put the sort of the rules to address that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is basically what you asked me when it comes to the example of Al-Khidr. Al-Khidr is a very rare example, as much as Jesus is a very rare example. You know, it's the rare example that highlights something, that wants to tell us something. And it's not the common. The Khidr could not have been a king. He is outside the realm of al-mulk. He is in the realm maybe of al-malakut, to highlight for us that there are different layers. You can see the zahir, but there are things that you can't see. And you have to be humble. So this is not, I mean, Al-Khidr did not teach Moses his Sharia. لم يعلمه الشريعة، هو علمه الحكمة. تمام? And you have to, this is again like the multi-layers and the different layers, you know, horizontal, vertical, you know, things are very multi-dimensional. And you have to develop this in the methodology, in the way you are building, يعني the education, how to create this complex mind instead of that flat, superficial, one way, one type, you know, mind. And here came to my mind when you were asking, I think that there is a difference between, for example, al-khilafa wal-nubuwa. Khilafatun ala minhaj al-nubuwa, but there is no tanzil. Tanzil is over. It's like the tanzil is full, okay? So you have to deal with it. And you have to understand the layers of meaning, etc., from different aspects. But some people see things. They are almost like al-Khidr. They are the Sufis who can see things. لكن هذا لا ينبني عليه عمل. إذا كانت كرامة مثلا أنه رأى رؤية, you know, it doesn't become a law. The nuances, the differences have to be seen, and this is why it came to my mind also الحجة والمحجة. لله الحجة البالغة, تمام؟ وهناك المحجة البيضاء. It's very interesting for me, has been fascinating for me. This has also to do with sociology, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that human beings are one. Like we are asking the question of human nature in politics and social theory and everything, okay? So we want to reach the core. And there are postmodernists who say that there is no essence. There is no essence, okay? So you decide for yourself, you know, chosen morality, chosen way of life, you know, there is no essence, okay? But we believe that there is like a human condition that we can say humans differ from other species in this way. And they share some of it, you know, the animality of the human, you know, there is a side of that as well. So I think that when you are talking about this, we want to take from the Khilafah and Nubuwah and Qiyada and Mulk, etc., patterns of the way people actually think. Moses thinks differently than Abraham. Mentality is different. The questions they ask, the way they deal with matters, the way they deal with the issues of authority. You know, Al-Anbiya are not stories for bedtime. They are patterns of ways of thinking and ways of management. And here you have two notions of al-hukm, judgment. You know, how do you make your judgment? And this is why our judgment when it comes to issues like sexuality, for example, it's basically based on religion. We have to see the problem rising or issues coming up in society by statistics. But does not mean that if a majority is adhering to that, it will become right instead of being wrong. So we move between different spheres, etc. And I think that al-khalq wal-amr wal-hukm wal-fasl wal-qada wal-hukm wal-hukuma wal-hukm wal-mulk are different from each other, and they should be set in a specific system, etc. Last but not least, I think that one of the things that we have not mentioned is the civil-military relations. You know, when it comes to knowledge production, so much knowledge is produced now for military purposes, and then they are thrown to the realm of the civil and of the social. You know, so and a lot of knowledge production is actually in social sciences funded by, you name it, intelligence, NATO, ministries of defense. You know, how does that actually affect the integrity and the humanity of the production of social sciences in our times, and making professors run after, you know, you are not appointed for a tenure track today if you are not, part of your job description is not to produce knowledge and take care of your students and love them and hug them, you know, and make them better human beings, wiser, but it's basically getting funds. And if you fail to do so, you're out. You know, so this machine of production, how can we create hierarchies? We have the universities, and we have the Islamists, by the way, who said, okay, we are going to produce our own knowledge. Hassan al-Banna wrote his رسائل البنا. إيه رسائل البنا في ميزان الفقه? Good vision. The fiqh, is this fiqh? Is this usul? Is this? It's a nice sort of 10 principles, some 20, I don't know what, you know. بس فيها قدر من التشغيب. يعني في شغب على العلوم الأخرى. And then after 8 years, you find that they are very poor in usul al-fiqh. They are very poor in the knowledge of comparative, you know, and they are the ones raising the flag of Islamism, you know. So it's like, it's very interesting how things develop. And this is why I asked for the revision of how we reach that point. And Alp Arslan, Professor Alp Arslan's book is very helpful in that. Maybe you can translate it at one other point, you know. So I think that this military factor that is rising in knowledge production and funding of very essential tools of knowledge, acquiring knowledge, etc., and the knowledge that we have here can basically be scanned, and we can be accountable for what we say and do. You know, in terms of knowledge production, we are not free.
Can I? There is 2 points I didn't address them, and I think it's important.
Of course, but could we first have the question?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Including the public sphere.
Can I make my question now?
Yes.
So I can speak.
Yes, go ahead.
شكرا دكتور ساري دكتورة. في الحقيقة أنا عندي 50 ملاحظة على كتابك اللي أنا بقرأه، بس هختار منهم 2 فقط عشان ما يطولوناش يعني. في التحليل حضرتك كنت بتساءل ده في أثناء قراءتي للكتاب، من هو يعني قارئك الذي وجهت له هذا الكتاب أصلاً؟ بمعنى هل أنت بتطالب بإصلاح الفقيه، يعني نذهب إلى المدارس القديمة في القيروان وفي الأزهر ونصلحها وندخل فيها العلوم الإنسانية حتى يخرج لنا يعني فقيه يستطيع التفلسف، يستطيع الكلام في الاجتماع، أم أنت بتقصد طالب العلوم الاجتماعية أنه هو يتشرع؟ من توجه الكلام؟ ايضا من تجربتي في الجامعه الاسلاميه انا ايضا درست القانون، وحصل معايا زي صديق عمر، تعرفنا على بعض احنا الاثنين بؤساء، احبطنا من هذه التجربه يعني. لانه اول سؤال سالته للدكتور في القانون انه القانون ده انا شايفه ان هو في ظلم للفقراء في الكومباني لو، فهو قال لي مش ممكن القانون يبقى غلط، فبعد كده ما سالتش ولا سؤال تاني. انما الفكره انه
ما ممكن يكون كتابي غلط على فكره.
فالمقصد لمن توجه الكلام، لانه احنا في الجامعه الكوريكولم بتاعنا كانوا بيحاولوا يعملوا حاجه شبه دي، في مواد اسمها مواد يعني اكتر من 25 كريدت اور، كانت كلها بيسموها لي UNGS، وكنت ادرس فيها الاسلاميك وورلد فيو، الاثكس اند فقه، ويعني كانت انا بقول لك محبطه جدا، يعني شديده الاحباط. يعني ما بين دكتور مثلا كان بيقول ان الديمقراطيه كفر، ودكتور تاني كان بيقول ان اصلا يعني الجي مارج ممكن تو بي كونسيدرد يعني. ف يعني ده كان المستوى صراحه يعني. ف ده طالب هندسه مثلا لما كان يجي، هو انا طالب قانون وشريعه وجنبي طالب هندسه وجنبي طالب اقتصاد، تلقينا للمسائل دي اذا افترضنا ان هو كلام يعني عليه العين يعني، فكان مختلف اكيد، وما اظنش ان هو كان فانكشن خالص يعني. فمن هو الذي نوجه له هذا الكلام؟ ثم اذا نتكلم عن اصلاح الفقيه، فانا بضم صوتي للدكتوره هبه، وكنت احب اسمع كلام حضرتك. لماذا استبعدت مثلا المدارس الشيعيه؟ يعني حد زي بكر الصدر في فلسفتنا واقتصادنا وانتاجه ده، او مثلا لما نقرا في نظريات العداله لحد مثلا زي طبري زاده، واحد من فقهاءكم، هو بيتكلم عن كانت وهيوم وبينقضهم بشكل، هو الراجل لا راح اوكسفورد ولا شيء يعني. فازاي يعني ليه حضرتك استبعدت التجربه الشيعيه من درسك؟ والهنديه ايضا، التجربه الهنديه. المساله الاخيره فكره علم الكلام، وانه في تراثنا الاسلامي كان علم الكلام بيحاول يلتمس معرفته عن الله سبحانه وتعالى عن طريق غير الشريعه، فهو بيحاول يثبت ان ربنا موجود باستعمال العقل بعيدا عن الشرع، ثم بعد ذلك يثبت النبوه ويثبت المعجزه، ومن خلالها يثبت ان هذا الشرع جيد ثم يسلم هنا. يعني ما بيعملش عشان كده الفقه الذي انتجه القاضي عبد الجبار رحمه الله المعتزلي هو نفسه اللي انتجه الجويني، هو نفسه اللي انتجه ابن تيميه، لا يوجد فروقات كبيره فيهم، لانه هو مش بينزل تحت، مش بينزل في الفقه، مش بيناقش الفروع، مش بيناقش علم العمران مثلا الناس ازاي توزع وتخطط، او حتى القانون بتفاصيله وهكذا. فهل حضرتك هل شكل من اشكال التكامل ان احنا نتعاقلا في بدل الميتافيزيقا نتعاقلا في الشريعه نفسها، ولا المفروض ان احنا نسلم بيها كما هي ونبدا ان احنا يعني ايه يكون مساحه الاجتهاد فيها قليله جدا كما يعني كان العلماء قبل الحداثه يعني موجودين بالشكل ده يعني. انا اسف على الاطاله، ليه لسه عندي يعني 48 ملاحظه ماشي. شكرا جزيلا.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for all this question, but just I forgot to reply to two interesting questions before. Of Heba, she criticized Habermas' vision in how religion can be secularized before entering the public sphere. I fully agree with you, and I criticize Habermas. So Habermas think that religious argument can be only in informal discussion, not in the parliament or as a statesman, etc. So I think there is a new schools of thought in the framework of liberal project, much more interesting than Habermas. Let me bring two scholars. Maeve Cook, the Irish philosopher who is she did her PhD with Habermas, and she resolved this issue saying that religion, like Marxism, like any ideas, they can be in the public sphere, but there is a rules to be non-authoritarian practical reason. So there is no exception for religion. So I like a lot what what he wrote, and actually I use it to understand as a theoretical framework to understand the debate in Tunisia. So I don't, for me, it's not, I don't espouse Habermas things, but nevertheless, when I teach in my university where I have a Christian, lightly religious, non-religious, etc. I mean, I try to convince them by bringing diversified argument. So I don't say I don't know. I also I have my الحقل التداولي. So I need to use Quran and etc. But I mean, but it's not sufficient to convince them. This is what I'm trying to say. And of course, I think more advanced than Maeve Cook is Cécile Laborde. And I'm so glad that the book is translated by Shabaka, Dinul Liberaliyya, Liberalism Religion, where she said, I mean, nobody in the United States contests that the president say in the name of God. Because the majority, I mean, it's not against any group. I mean, if you are not religious, if you don't believe on God, you don't feel it that's against. Okay? So my example always I bring in the Dastur of Tunisia to say religion is Islam. I think it's a very secular. It's a majority. I mean, I don't have any issue with that. I will have a problem if Israel wrote this because it's against there is a history of exclusion of that at certain time it was a majority non-Jewish. So we need to make, this is why I said we need to make a moral argument. It's not white and black. It's not a legal argument. You need to have this gymnastic in your thought. My second point is about, I didn't address your very important question about Sufism. I think absolutely, I think we need to rehabilitate and the whole project of Taha Abdul Rahman. I think there is a lot of interesting things and a lot of blah 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 in Taha Abdul Rahman. Interesting things is really to bring this tazkiyah and how important in al-zahir wal-batin and to take al-unseen seriously. I think this is our I see Taha Abdul Rahman. What is not factored in, I think, in Taha Abdul Rahman and usually in many Islamists, the way they think how to formulate their argument, that they have the assumption if there is if the good Islam come or Islamic State come, it will be a religious congruence. And I translated by التطابق الديني, congruence. It means that people thought and practice will be the same, that there is a pattern of you can know from religiosity of people their vision about economic, social. This religious congruence is a fiction, exactly like the fiction of the Marxists, to think that religion is a passé and etc. So both are fiction. So religious congruence is something very serious. Religion, and this is, we should take it into account. Take it into account to address it. In a very serious, I analyzed a survey about religion in public life in 4 countries, and a very serious one. I think 5,000 interviews, and that I trust how it was designed. There is a things. If you are religious, you will, for instance, almost half of in these countries against polygamy. Is there a verse clearly cut on polygamy? I think so. But people, half of Muslims, of Muslims are against polygamy. So what the meaning of that? How you will address this? If somebody would consider it religious incongruence, it means that you need to address it. So this is why you need to look at it, and not to have the assumption of simplifying things, that if people return to Islam and the Sufism, if you like, it will be tazkiyah, will be rehabilitated, and we will resolve the problem. We will resolve part of the problem, yes, but not all the problem. So this is where I think we meet. I will finish with example. I sent WhatsApp to my dear friend Mu'taz al-Khatib one years ago or a few months ago, saying, I just have a student of mine. She came. She has her parent from different religion, Christian and Muslim, and she told me, Professor, I decide I am not anymore Muslim. I cannot be in a religion where I cannot inherit from one of my parents. And actually, in Lebanon, just to know, it's not only in Islam. In Christianity, the same thing. You don't inherit. Yeah. So I sent him a message saying, look, in the fuqaha, have they I mean, any argument, etc. And he kept sending me, and it's very interesting that I noticed that even in the evening, in the night, he sent me things. So I felt that he feel the malaise. It's a unease. He is unease with the clear cut, almost in that fuqaha, almost all of them, they said that. And in the morning, I kept, etc. And he said me, look, Sari, you want fatwa from me? You will not get it. This is, do we need to change this? My opinion, yes, we need to change this. But it need a kind of a group of something like that. So this is, if you like, and this is why if you like, yes, inheritance, a system, and I agree, but there is within it things really you need some ethical reasoning before you give the fatwa. So is it this qat'iyat or not? So again, just to say that the boundary, there is a fuzzy boundaries more and more. But while I acknowledge al-qat'iyat, okay, I acknowledge there is something really divine knowledge, etc. And non-qat'iyat, but then there is always a fuzzy boundaries sometimes that we should take it into account. Qat'iyat is fixed. What is fixed in Quran. So this kind of things, that this is why yes, we need to do like the fuqaha did. Our fuqaha, they are smart. They did they did a moral reasoning, and then they issue fatwas for their time. We need to do moral reasoning to issue our fatwas for our time. As simple as that. I'm not asking, in any case, the whole book, there is no fatwas inside, there is no, it's just a kind of methodology of bringing the conversation together. Yeah. There is about Shia, sorry, I should say one word. First, before Shia, عقلنة الشريعة. I don't use rationality. I'm very Jean Rawlsian. I look to reasonable, because we are our reasoning part. There is emotion, there is logic inside, so it's not rationalizing. I would never say it's not rational. I would say it's not reasonable. And in reasonability, it's not only philosophy. In reasonability, it's sociology. It's really most of people think in a certain way. It will be reasonable to think, etc., unless there is a clear violation of human rights, of a clear of big things. Al-musawa, the equality of a human being, something also in our tradition. Now, about the Shia. Actually, I did work on al-Hawza. I did a lot of work on al-Hawzas. And at a certain point, my hidden agenda is to make competition between Shia and Sunni. Say, look, Shia, how they are nice. I mean, and they bring, etc. No, sorry. No. It's in any case, look, Iran, Sara Shariati, the daughter of Muhammad, yeah, we're in the same conference, Lutfi Sunar, we're in Tehran, and we met with her, and I have a long discussion and talk with her. I mean, they abolish sociology used to be taught. I mean, look, everything changed after Khatimi. The end of the Khatimi, they don't use Aslamat al-Ma'arif, but they use criminalizing knowledge, not Islamizing, criminalizing. So those who don't think like them, they put them in the prison or out of the university. Worse. So I think it's no need to say what is authentic Shia or historically Mutahhari or etc. or Ali Shariati. Look to the reality. Now I know how Hawza is operating in Iran and in Lebanon. I think they don't have much lesson to give to the Sunni. As simple as that. Thank you.